Thank you, Zach.
No worries. I'm going to go ahead and sit up here and join y'all. Got actually quite a few nuggets, some pretty important stuff to kind of talk about. So, as you may have heard, a lot of stuff's actually happened in the past couple weeks from Anne-Marie White. You might have heard that she recently submitted her resignation paperwork. I believe her last day will be June 14th. And she's been with EM since March of 2018. She's going to be replaced by William Ike White. He'll serve as the senior advisor to Undersecretary DeBarr overseeing EM. Mr. White comes from the NNSA, serving most recently as the NNSA Associate Principal Deputy Administrator. So also recently, and I was actually checking the news today, and I'm not 100% read up on it, so I'm just going to throw it out there and just caveat it. I believe the House voted on the marks today, but we're going to talk about the subcommittee vote, which I do know, and that's what my notes are written to. Just to kind of like caveat. So the draft bill passed the subcommittee vote. I believe it was about a week and a half ago, and what I have in my notes is that I was going to go to the full House for vote this upcoming week. But again, I think that they might have voted on it today. And then it will go through the Senate sometime in July to be voted on, and those are the marks and stuff. And that's how ultimately will lead to our fiscal year 20 budget. So, big takeaways from the House marks. And I have my little numbers here, and we'll just kind of generally talk about like 19 enacted, and then I'll talk about like the 20, the President's budget request, and then I'll talk about the bill that the House, again, I believe, passed today. So RMO space, just a friendly reminder, that's PBS 11, and then PBS 13, PBS 30, and 41, and 42. That's called our RMO. It's a control point for Congress. So our 19 enacted, and I'm going to round here, was about $490 million. Our President's request was $491 million. And then the bill actually bumped us up to about $516 million. So good story there. Coming into and they just, if you're interested, they actually do line items, construction projects and stuff separately out of like the PBS. So this is why you're going to get a couple little things like EOC. The 19 enacted was approximately $1 million. The 20 request was approximately $7 million, and then the bill was $7 million. So the EOC appears to be going down the right road there. So liquid waste, the 19 enacted was 697 million. The 20 request, President's request, was 798 million, and then the bill was 798 million. So a plus up from about 100 million from the 19 enacted number. And I know you guys heard a lot of stuff is kind of going on. The idea is salt waste processing facility is going to be up and running. We're going to be processing the waste and saltstone at a much higher rate and feeding the SDUs. So that's all like what that plus up is kind of centering around. As well as you have AMC in there. 19, there was nothing for AMC. The 20 requests, there was 50 million. And for this, the House marks was approximately 3 million. The Argus project,
Approximately how much?
3 million. And we'll circle back around and we'll go through any of the questions and stuff that you might have.
Are you reading from the doc that I have here, or are you reading from something separate?
I'm reading from my notes. So, okay, coming back to Argus. So, if you recall, Argus is like our security system that's been getting upgraded. Historically, this has been funded out of PBS 20. It was moved into a line item, so this is why it's kind of broken out. So for 19 enacted, it shows a 0, but reality is it's been getting funded for quite a long time now. So for the 20 requests, it was zeroed out, but for the House marks, it was actually put in at about 4.5. SDU 7, again, construction, 19 enacted, about 41. The 20 requests, about 40 million, and the bill supported that. 8 and 9, the 19 enacted was approximately 8 million. The 20 request, about 52 million, and the bill supported that. 10 and 11 and 12, the SDUs. 19 enacted, nothing, and then we have about $500,000 for the President's request and then the House marks, just to put it in the books. And then finally, salt waste processing facility, the 19 enacted was 130 million, and then the 20's President's request and the bill was about 21 million. One other thing, so the community regulation and support, again, this is PBS 100. The 19 enacted was approximately 11 million. And then the president's budget and then subcommittee is approximately $7 million right now. Okay, and so last thing, I believe some of y'all might know, I think Kim did go to the last meeting down in Savannah. Kim's going to be replacing me in the coming months, so nice upgrade for y'all. Congratulations. And so I'm going to be hanging around for the next probably 3 or 4 committee meetings, making sure Kim has like a just understanding of everything and just to kind of support her in that. And then at that time will kind of be the full transition. I'll still be around for the military presentations and stuff like that. And then, of course, you'll probably see the fruits of a lot of my work with the budgets and stuff like that, but just won't be as visible anymore. So, any questions on what I just kind of went through? Really?
Sounds good.
Okay, there we go. I was surprised.
Dave of August Cap. Thank you for that information, Zach. What do you know about the Senate? Anything at this point?
Well, so nothing's. They haven't really started their process yet. They're fixing to kick off. I know we're doing a lot of information and stuff requests, but there's nothing that we can really discuss at this point.
Is what you're sharing with the notes, is this about standard for the past years? You know, where you have 19 enacted as X and the president's request is Y, which is generally a plus or sometimes a plus, and then the House is plus. Is that kind of the trend that you've seen? Is there anything that shocks you from what you've seen in your notes?
Well, yeah, so this is kind of like the format that the budget process works. There's nothing really out of the ordinary with that. So they always have the enacted number, and if they don't have the current year's enacted number, they go back to the most recent enacted. So sometimes if we're under a CR for an extended period of time, you'll see it's almost 2 years ago enacted, so you see a bigger jump. But they always use the enacted, and as you get in, then you'll see that compared to the president's request, and then as you get into the marks from the House mark and even the Senate mark, you'll see the marks in the deltas compared to the president request and the enacted. So all that's pretty standard how they break that down in the process.
Do any of the numbers surprise you or trouble you? And when I say you, I'm not talking about you yourself, but trouble DOE.
Well, so, the budget's a process, right? And there's a lot of opportunities, and there's still opportunities to go with the Senate. There's a lot of good in budgets, and then just like with any budget, there's some winners and there's some losers, right? Overall, this is a pretty good budget for us, especially for the liquid waste, and that's the site's priority, and this is funding liquid waste to a level that we need to see it at to make sure that we're doing the work that we need to do there.
Thanks. I just want to remind everybody that when you grab the mic, to identify yourself so when they do the minutes, they know who was talking.
My bad.
Because they're good, but they're not clairvoyant. So.
That was Malcolm Phillips asking the question.
Okay, thank you. And Dave Avakis.
I think I said my name, did I?
I don't know.
No, I don't think so.
Dave of August Cap. One of the things that I think I read was that this House Energy and Water bill is included in a rather large minibus. Have you, do you know, is military construction in with that again this year, and Veterans Affairs, or do you know? If so, that's a good thing. So.
Well, yeah, we'll see, right? So, to my knowledge, it is part of a minibus. I actually saw that in the read. As far as specifics, as whether VA and the extent of the DoD dollars and stuff, I couldn't tell you 100%. But I do believe there is some combining of some stuff out of defense. But I'm not exactly sure what and which items.
Thanks, Zach.
That was easy. You guys don't want any dirt on Kim or anything like that? No? Okay. Let's hang out here because I feel like you guys are going to have some conversation pieces.
So, this time, French. So moving down the agenda, the committee discussion are partly for the the full cab, and I wasn't there. But I don't know if anybody has any comments on either the common infrastructure presentation or the budget update presentation. I think Zach's is a later budget update than what John did at the full cab, right?
Say that one more time.
I said the budget update that John Lopez did at the full cab is not as new as what's on your notes, right? You have the latest?
That's right.
This Tom French, just to talk about solar a little bit. The
Thanks, Gil. I would 100% have to look that up. Give me a minute and we can do that.
Jim Giel, Cab. I can help you out a little bit.
Oh,
There
thank
were two
goodness.
parts. First part was dealing with putting solar on roofs of the existing buildings. And the second part requested DOE to look at a long-term study of how solar could be applied on the site.
Right. And so. And I know,
Not favorable for the rooftop because of cost. The study is underway, and my understanding is in Charleston that we will see the results of that study.
yeah, that's correct. It was recommendation 360. They rejected the sub-recommendation on the rooftops, but accepted the recommendation on the study. And so that's what we'll get in September.
So this Tom French, I don't know if everybody's been keeping up with what's happening in South Carolina, but there's been a very active group pushing for solar legislation changes, and they had passed the bill and it was running out this year. They repassed the bill, reauthorized it. So now what they're doing is they're giving a better exchange rate for providers. So there's a lot of money pouring into South Carolina, and if you're right out of Aiken or go by Saluda, there's two big solar farms. And what those guys do are put up their own money, and they get a power purchase agreement from the utility. And Dominion has sort of signed up that they're going to buy some of these power purchase agreements. So there might be more opportunities for the site as they move along in this. It's just passed like last month, so could be very good.
Yeah, but Malcolm Phillips, the solar is still economically subsidized, and that's what makes it even marginally economically attractive now. So I guess that's the reason why the rejection on the economic scale of putting it on rooftops, because economically it doesn't compete with other alternative energy sources.
So I don't want to get off in the weeds, but the big power farms are not subsidized. What they're doing is they're just getting a favorable rate from the utilities. And so they're doing all the money and making their money based on the rates the utilities are paying them to generate. And this new law pushed the utilities to pay what they pay themselves, right? So the big farms are different than a house. The house still gets some credits, and DOE probably wouldn't get those. But hopefully big farms are much more efficient. So maybe there's some opportunities. So Gil, are you parked on Silver Bluff?
No, I'm actually driving out Washington Road right now.
Oh, okay. It's a good thing you aren't on Silver Bluff, or you'd be parked. So the next thing on the agenda is I wanted to go back over the metrics for at year-end progress for the EM mission, and I don't want to talk about the numbers.
We're going to talk about the Jones.
Well, we can. You want to?
I think there's a lot of information here.
Okay. Well, I thought it was superseded by what he just told us. But.
No, that doesn't supersede it.
Okay. Well, I'll let you handle it since you were there and I wasn't. So.
Dave Vavakas, Cap. The one thing that was somewhat striking for me is that the President's budget for FY20, we showed a pension contribution for SRS. Let's see, I think the difference is that what was submitted in the president's budget to Congress and where the estimate is on slide 5 in John's presentation. And I think I added correctly. I think John said that I added correctly. There's a $49 million difference now between what was sent to Congress versus what is in this chart for FY20. So there's a $49 million problem there that John acknowledged, and so that was something that I think maybe we need to give some consideration to with possibly working with DOE on about addressing that.
Okay. Do you know what the house mark was, Zach?
Well, hold on. Hold that question for 1 second. I just want to make sure I understand. John spoke about the $49 million difference in the pension is what you're referring to, like from the January report into where we submitted our budget initially? Is that what you're referring to?
The difference is John had a new estimate for FY20.
But for the pension, correct?
Yeah, for pension.
Right.
And so they broke out by PBS in the president's budget, in the congressional justification. They broke out the pension amounts for each of the PBSs.
Yep.
So I looked at that and compared it to what John had said would be the pension for. Wait a minute, I'm sorry. I said the wrong slide. It's actually slide 6. Yeah. So there's a $49 million difference in FY20 between what Congress has and what's on this slide. And this estimate that is on slide 6 is $49 million higher now. So that is means that there's $49 million if you wanted to keep with the same level of the president's budget that you're going to have to find to make it up somewhere to keep the thing where it was. So.
Yeah, so let me go ahead and share just a little bit of information just for some context. So first off, that is factually correct. So every single year we get a report from, I forget the firm, our actuaries, and that's typically done in January. So just think of the timeline, just like going back in your head real quick. So in that January report that we receive, or when that report's done, I think we get it sometime in February, sometime in there. They update like what we need to fully fund our pensions, or based off of, hey, you're going to do flat funding, you need X, you do the ERISA minimum, you're going to need Y. So that report was done in January, February, after a historically bad December. So things change quite often in the pension. So the $49 million number, if I'm correct, and I believe that I am, is based off that historically bad December where the market has recovered to a degree, or if not fully recovered. Now, there still could be issues because it constantly swings. So what we do is we hold current on a report, the most recent report, and the report that John was citing, if I'm not mistaken, was like a flash report, like update. Hey, this is where it currently is. So just a little bit more context. So the market constantly changes, and it's just the best guess at the time. It's not necessarily like a $49 million problem today, or it might not even be a $49 million problem in fiscal year 20, but based off the best information we had currently, that is our best guess. So just a little further context. But we use that number and we do cite that number as a issue that we're concerned of. As we're talking, because that's the report that we go off of.
But Dave Vavagas, Cap, not to get down in the weeds here, but are you suggesting that there was a major change in the discount rate between what John presented and what you have now?
No, again, I'm just that's the most recent report that we use, and we will use that report presenting. I'm just all I'm saying is there's a difference in time, right? That's all I'm saying. So like that report was done at the end, like looks after December, and that's historically bad. I think it was the worst December in X amount of years. So that's what the actuaries base their numbers off of.
They don't update it.
Well, we get like a flash report, and I think it just came out recently. Honestly, I'm not the smartest on it, but I'm just a little bit further context. We use the most recent report from our actuaries when we talk to Congress because it's the best information we have, and it's the most credible information.
So maybe for the next full CAD meeting, we can get an update.
I don't think there will be an update by then. It all like what's best? It's a snapshot in time. So everything changes. Like the market in 6 months now could hopefully double. Not likely, right? And then we don't have that problem, or it could drop again, and we have a bigger problem. So when we throw out these numbers, again, it's just a snapshot in time based off the most recent report. It's not that it's not an issue or can't be an issue. It's just it's fluid, I guess is the best way to say that.
Yeah, and I'm familiar with how it's calculated.
Sure.
And how they go through your-
Yeah, that's right.
But I
You
think you could give us the latest update, because by midsummer, which will be in July, there's usually an update from the Buck Brothers or whoever it is that does the actuaries.
Well, so we do get a flash report, and I'd have to go back and find out exactly when, but the information that we cite and that we will point to is our big report that we receive yearly, and that's what we cite everything off of to be consistent. So there's, I believe, like one, maybe two, like updates along the way, but we always point back to the big report that we get from the actuaries yearly. Just my understanding.
Okay. Well, I was just thinking if by July you know a little bit more about what the Senate's doing, what the marks look like, John will have some idea whether we're going to cover it or we're still 49 million short and have to take it out of someplace else. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I think it's worth just doing a quick 30-second. Yes, Gil?
I assume that was Zach talking.
Yes.
And I didn't hear. I mean, it was kind of hard for me to hear, but where does the pension stand on the RISA law right now?
What was the question?
Where does pension stand on ERISA?
The discount rate. You asking about the discount rate, Gil?
No, I mean, I'm actually asking about RISA. It's the set by Congress at the level of funding. We have the actuarial and the discount rates. I understand that, but there's actually the funding level that ERISA requires the pension plan to be funded to. Are we well? I mean, because we were kind of hitting that number barely when we started the ad hoc committee. Are we still with what happened at the end of 2018? Are we still good with that number, or have we dipped low?
No, I think what Zach and Dave are saying is, according to John Lopez, and I wasn't there, we're $49 million short from hitting the ERISA target. And so they'll have to come up with that money to make the target.
Gil, Dave Vavakis Cap. Gil, from my understanding from John, is they're in compliance with the ERISA law.
And,
From you, Dave, I think that you're probably the most informed, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
So we'll just do
well, there's one minor correction that if you look at our strategy for pension in the future, we're moving to a flat funding, which it meets the ERISA minimum, but it's not funding at the ERISA minimum. If Gil didn't hang up on us.
Gil.
Yeah. Okay. Well.
I think you meant to mute, may have accidentally.
What is it, 80%?
No, I'm still here. Somebody else muted.
Oh,
Okay, good.
Okay.
So we'll get a very brief update at the next full CAD meeting. Thanks, Zach. All right, so let's move to the next topic. Let's talk about the metrics. And Zach worked last year to make new metrics, new presentation. And I felt like they were very good. I just thought there was a couple opportunities to make them a little bit more understandable. I know that the cab has problems understanding exactly what's going on sometimes, and sometimes the public does when they see all these slides come out. And I just thought it'd be a chance for us to walk through some of these slides and see if there's any recommendations we had on format. And I'll give you my
Little R recommendations.
huh?
Little R recommendations.
Yeah, a little more. We're not
Yeah,
going to write a
yeah, not a
recommendation.
formal recommendation.
No.
Well,
This
let's use the word suggestions.
suggestions. Okay. So,
That just means a thing with us.
I
I need
know.
to make sure that we use the right word.
So to me, if you look at the EM mission, a lot of it's easily quantifiable, understood. So DWPF produces so many cans, right? And we know what the loading was. We know what the input was. Salt waste processing is going to come online. We know where they are in their startup schedule. We know what everything else is sort of measurable, and I think Zach did a good job covering that. One of the key things is the waste tanks and then doing the switch over to SWPF. And so the waste tanks, to me, there's a lot of activity that goes on, and we just, when I read the reports, all I see is we close the tank, we're working on one tank, and it looks like nothing else is going on. But they're working on about 10 or 15 tanks simultaneously. And in the report, it'd be nice to be able to see that. Jim and I were just talking about it a little bit. If you had 4 categories, like I'm in dissolution, I'm in recycle, I'm in seasonal extraction, whatever they are, and then you color-coded the chart for the tanks, and then you could easily look at all the tanks and see what activity they're under. Some tanks have no activity, but most tanks have something going on in them during the year. And I think that might be a way to represent that. You and I talked about that. You have them color-coded now. I'm looking at your SRS tank farm chart.
Which slide is that?
It's this one. It doesn't
9.
have the number 9. Mm-hmm. But I'm just, this is a very good slide, but if you have one more slide that looked at only activity, right, instead of new style tank, old style tank, but just so you could see, if you look across the tank farm, you could see these people, this many are actively going toward discharge and grouting. These are in the early processes of resolution of the salt cake and that kind of stuff. Does that make sense, Zach, or is that too hard to do?
No, I don't believe that would be too hard to do at all.
I just thought there's a lot going on, and people don't. When you look at this chart, it's not always easy to understand how much is actually going on. And I've had people ask me, "Well, you got 3,000 people working in liquid waste in the tank farm, and what are they all doing? You just close one tank in 2 years, right? That's all they hear." And I would just like to be able to, for all of us to understand exactly how much is going on.
Yeah, but this is Malcolm Phillips. For metrics to be meaningful, there's got to be metrics. It's got to be not just, okay, here's what we've done, but here's what we forecast doing, and here's what we're playing against our forecast. Here's our plan, and here's what actually is happening.
Yeah,
And I know there's one chart in here that's that's great in that regard, but if there are other ways to do that, if you're trying really to look at to portray something so somebody can understand it quickly, that's the best way to do it.
I agree, except the tank farm is sort of a unique project because you got a lot of activities going on in separate facilities, and there isn't a line that says, there is a line, it's very simple. It says this tank will be closed here, this tank will be closed in 2 years, this tank will be closed in 2 years. But you miss all the activity in between. I'm just trying to figure out a way to bring that out a little bit. And in everything else, I agree with you. You got to have a goal, and how do we do against the goal? How many tanks out of DOPF, or how much salt waste to be processed? And I think these set of slides do that pretty well. It's just the waste tanks. To me, I think it's a harder story to tell, Malcolm. So if you have good ideas, any ideas would be good.
It's just that, if you look at your planning docs, and your planning docs have activities that you're doing, the question is, did you meet your schedule for those activities, whatever those are? And that's metrics. And that's how you find out whether you're on track or not on track with metrics. And so with each tank, as an example, you have a plan associated with that tank and what activities are supposed to occur at what timelines. And the question is, are you meeting those? Are you behind on this tank? Are you ahead on that tank? Or whatever?
Well, I was trying to, I understand what you're saying, but I was trying not to have 40 slides with one tank per slide. I was trying to figure out how to make an overall representation that we could look at how many tanks are in dissolution and when do they transition to the next phase. Sort of an overview. I think the other thing, we could just list the tanks and talk about their status, you know, and their schedule. But it's a pretty complicated picture to look at in aggregate.
Yeah, in all my comments, y'all guys understand fully. I can't even spell this yet. So this is my first committee meeting.
Oh, no,
and
it's
so
good.
my comments are just from other background sources.
Yeah, well, that's
what
good.
makes sense.
Yeah, we ought to have this. Is there?
Yeah, I've got a couple. Jim Giel, Kev.
Okay.
The chart that has the tanks identified, color-coded, et cetera, I think gives you a good idea of what the total scope and complexity might be. There's one in here which is waste removal projects in process or in progress. If that were expanded on a separate slide, okay, to show what you're looking for, Tom.
Yeah.
Okay, where you could, you know, tanks that nothing going on yet, but this one's in this stage, that one's in the next stage. And I think you can condense that down and put it on one slide and convey across the level of activity that's going on.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's good. So maybe you have this slide and then one more.
Yeah, I keep this one for sure.
And then the next one does just what you said. It's either one of four colors, right? Nothing happening, something happening.
Done.
We're draining the tank and then we're grouting it, or whatever the phases are.
Or could you also have a dual thing where there's a separate color that says, and this tank is on schedule with our planning docs, and if it isn't, why not? Do you see what I'm saying, Todd? I mean, this is just 101 in project management, obviously.
Well, yeah. So this presentation has kind of morphed over a few years' time. It used to be just kind of like a end of the year status update, like, hey, here's some like the big, very high level type stuff. And to y'all's point, I think 2 years ago we had a tank farm and it had planned 0, done 0, and that was the metric. And well, of course, there was work that happened throughout the year, but at the end of the year, it didn't show anything. Dave, that was actually your comment that we took action on, right? Is that right? Did we? Okay, I believe it was you. So to kind of like address some of that, like, hey, plan 0, done 0 type metric, which was probably too at high level. We brought in some of these pictures and stuff like that, and we honestly, like, and I think I even said it in the presentation, it was like, we're going to see what sticks here. So all these, like, we can make this look a lot of different ways for you, and if I don't believe that's too much of an ask to do the different activities and stuff, but what we're trying to stay out of is this, I'm just going to go ahead and say it, is like this oversight role, and we don't want to get too far down into the weeds. There's a lot of information that goes in here, but when we're trying to make this a high level where folks can understand. And I don't think you guys are there. I don't think you're like poking too far into the weeds yet.
So
just
Malcolm,
kind of,
one of the things we're trying not to do is we're not trying to do the project management.
right.
We don't want to even appear to be doing that because they would prefer that Jim will tell you, they prefer that we not try to do that. So we're just trying to show the goals at a high level so that the public can look at it and understand what's going on. That's what we're really trying to get to. And for the cab. There are a lot of people in the cab that still hear all this stuff, but there's so much stuff, they're still confused about what's going on. So we're trying to work with Zach and Kim, I assume, to get a tool that's easier to understand and we can refine it. And I understand the project management concern, and we're not gonna ring that bell. I mean, I don't think we can.
No, it's just trying to say, okay, from an overview standpoint, from our standpoint, where are you on schedule or not on schedule?
Yeah.
And that's the gig. In which things you're not on schedule with, why aren't you on schedule? I mean, that's.
Well, see,
that's
we can't
stuff.
ask that question. So let me finish
Why
talking.
can't we ask that question?
Well, because we're not monitoring the schedule. What we want to portray is there activity going on in all of the tanks or as many tanks as possible, right? And we're not going to go through every project milestone. I mean, they have
No, it wasn't every. It's just whatever you're blowing. What are your problems? I mean, that doesn't seem like we're getting down to the weeds. That's just. Otherwise, we're just kind of smiling, going, "Oh, yes, everything's cool." Well, maybe it isn't.
Yeah, well, if everything's not cool in the project, it's not our job to fix it, right? Our job is to make sure that the department is communicating with the public, and the public gets all the information they need to understand what's going on and how to move forward. And so we're kind of acting as that interface. And Jim and I have talked about this, trying real hard not to go, oh, give me all your project things, I'm going to mark them up, because I could do that.
Yeah.
But he doesn't want me to do that. He doesn't want my help.
So
anyway.
So just a little bit further information. We do talk about the challenges and like if there's any milestones missed or anything like that. For this particular year, like there was the liquid waste system-wide outage. So we did address that in the challenge that present. But again, and this is where I talked about like this presentation has morphed over the years. This is just a roll-up. The deep dive issues where we're talking about like, hey, are we missing this milestone? What are we going to track? You actually have the subject matter experts come throughout the year and do presentations on throughout the year. And this, again, this is designed to be like a nice roll-up and conclusion of that. So all those type questions, all those like lines of thoughts, there is a forum for that, and that's when the SME or whoever, like Jim Folk or whoever the contractor designates that talks about these particular issues, and you receive the presentation throughout the year, that's the opportunity to discuss that and go in and dive deep on this. Because historically, and I think this is going to change this year, where you're going to get a little bit of a higher person on this, because, like I said, this is morphed into like a very almost like a very political presentation, and I don't believe it's going to be Cam or myself anymore doing this, and it's going to be on a higher level because, like, again, how it's morphed. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just I'm just throwing that out there.
So when they had a problem with salt waste processing facility and all the valve operators were inoperable and they had to replace them all, they came in and gave us a very deep dive on what's going on, why is this happening, and you kind of want to go, how did you not know 400 valves weren't going to work? But they gave us a very good explanation.
He's been very patient.
Doug Howard Cap. Jim, what I would be looking for and what I would like is a sheet, maybe something that folds out with the tanks like you have them here, color coded, numbered, and then on the side of it a status, and running down right to side so I could look at it and quickly to see what the status of that particular tank is. One line bullet status of that tank, the action that's going on currently, at that on that tank.
Yeah, so I was hoping to do that very same thing with the color code, because if you have a deep dive and they explain to you how they work on the tanks, and they go and start doing dissolution, they start doing chemistry, they do rests, and it's really complicated. And if you just try to put it up at on schedule, not on schedule, it all depends on the chemistry and what batch they're getting ready to feed to the mixing tanks, and it's a lot more complicated than yes or no, I'm on track or not. But I wanted to be able to at least show, yeah, we know that this tank is active, this tank's active, this tank's
Earn value, like percentages type.
Right. Well, Jim Folk, Dewey. I think I remember sitting here about a year ago and having the same conversation. Right. Yeah. And so we took a shot at a round. And the biggest thing I offer up is let us know what it is you want to see. Okay? Because I've probably got 100 indicators back in the office on different parts of this. And so the main thing is if we know what you want to see, because, for instance, in your status of the tanks, for years I've had a presentation in there on the old style tanks, and it had about 6 tiers, Tom, back to your point, about 6 tiers of status. And the 24 tanks, old style tanks, were scattered across those 6 tiers, whatever phase they were in. And then we would highlight as one tank moves from one phase to the next in our presentation. So, so as an example, that feels almost exactly like what you're talking about. Yeah. So, again, I think if you can make it clear to Zach, not only
My background has always been in headquarters organizations in the federal government, two different agencies. What we're responsible for, and what all agencies are responsible for, departments, is the annual performance report and the annual performance plan. And there's a uniform format that's required in the APR and APP, as they're called, for each of the programs and each of the performance goals or measures. I printed out a couple of them from the DOE, APP, APR, and I'll pass these around. But what they list is the program, the performance goal measure, the fiscal year, and then they take this out to 18 and 19, and they haven't updated 18 and 19 yet, so these are TBDs. And then they tell you whether the result was met or not. They tell you what the target is. They tell you what the endpoint target is, and then they also have some commentary if necessary and some documentation, methodology, that sort of thing. So I'll pass this around, but I think this is the format that should be used and is consistent.
I'll actually make a comment if I could. The reason we started down this path originally was we were getting these kind of reports, and nobody can read them. You can, but there's 80% of the people in the cabinet and the public can't read them.
These are straightforward.
No.
How about this, Tom? Let's do this. Let's take a step back, just as a group.
Okay.
All right. Let's do precisely what Jim Folk said. Let's look at each slide in here, the individual intent. So, with the liquid waste facilities and tank farms, what are the 3 or 4 actual indicators that you want? Let's not worry about format.
Thanks. We know this one's in mixing, and this one's in draining, and whatever. This one's in grouting.
Yeah, I know the chart you saw.
And I had gotten that information to you, and you were going to check into it. And I don't remember that we ever got anything back from you on that. It tracking, or apparently weren't tracking at your level. So.
Item, and you were saying this one was in trouble because it was red,
Amen.
yellow it had a caution, green it was great and going.
That's exactly what I was talking about. Something that says, are you on schedule with what you planned? Red, green, or yellow?
Yeah, if you had questions, you dealt with them, but basically it gave you a very quick overview as to where the problems might be.
Amen.
So I want to give you my perspective one more time. I've done a lot of projects. I've done big projects. We used to do that. Red, green light. Get the guy up, rat him out in front of the screen. What's wrong? But that's really not what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is get an overall status and communicate that with the public, because we represent the public. And I don't know that. I don't know what I'd do if DOE had all red lights on the chart. I don't know what that means to me. I mean, as a cab member, as a private citizen, it means, well, hey, there's something wrong there, right? But I just don't want us to trip over this line of I'm not trying to run DOE. I'm just trying to understand DOE. That's where I was trying to go.
But Malcolm Phillips, the red, green, yellow status, and there's nothing golden about those colors, but that concept is pretty fundamentally important, because if you're just saying status, is it closed, is it open, is it in progress, truth of the matter is that doesn't tell you a whole lot. That doesn't tell you whether at the end of the year you're going to have met goals or anything. That just says, okay, is it ongoing, is it closed, but the red, green, yellow gives you a feel for what it is. From the standpoint, are you progressing as you thought you should progress? And whether it's red, green, and yellow doesn't make any difference, or a general over comment, or your own schedule, whatever, however you want to do that. But that's the information that you would kind of want to portray. And I think the public wants to know that. Are you on schedule?
Element as well as the status as of a particular point in time.
Well,
and by the way, this information you have, I mean, I know you have it all over the place. We're not asking, I mean, nobody be asking for you to recreate anything, because you have it dead on.
I missed our time, and I should have stopped us a few minutes ago. At 5:45, we should have asked. I know the empty room is a key indicator of that, speaking of metrics, but is there any public comment? Okay, seeing none. Even though we started a little bit late, we're coming up on our projected end time, and we've talked about all of one slide.
Well, I think that, I really think that's the key slide.
That's the only slide that you really want to provide
all
input
of them,
on?
I think, as you write them down, you can tweak the numbers, but all the rest of them are very clear,
Okay.
and you can read them, and they did a nice job putting graphics and then saying, here's the truck carrying the
Here's the process.
waste drums, right?
I just want to make sure
There's
that you
somebody
guys
with a
cover the topics that you want to cover. That's all.
It really was, that was my concern, is for
Okay.
everybody to understand what the waste tanks are doing, because they're so complicated.
David Boxcap, I agree, Tom, but I think the thing that's important is that you have to have some uniformity in each of these performance measures. You have to see the same target, the target listed. You have to list each of the years, and they have to be over the same period of time. We have to know what the future targets are. We have to know whether they've achieved their goals, and that's the problem that I have with these, is there's a lot of inconsistency in that you don't, trying to compare one target to another target, you're not sure whether, how these things, integrate with each other. And I just don't understand some of these in here, because they are not uniform. That's my problem.
Doug Howard-Cap, I'm getting confused here. I'm not sure. Are we looking for performance measures? Are we looking for current status of these tanks? I mean, what is it that we're looking for? The performance measure up to date of this particular tank, or the current status that this tank is in?
I was going after the current.
At a year and some change ago, did not like that. They wanted to see some different things. We didn't get, it wasn't very clear after the end of those conversations what you guys were looking for. We want to be able to understand. We want to see this more visible. Like, we don't understand these numbers. So again, what DOE did is like, well, we're going to throw a couple different things at you, and we'll just kind of take this like presentation as a learning year almost, and you tell us what you like moving forward. So that's like, I mean, yes, the presentation is inconsistent by design. We didn't, frankly, get a lot of feedback of what you guys were looking for. And I'm honestly, I don't know where to go at this point either. I mean, I'll go whichever way we can go, but I think the important thing is y'all to be able to understand exactly what we're doing with these numbers and providing the meaningful context. But I'm just going to say it one more time, because I feel like this is lost. These numbers, and this is a roll-up of the year. The deep down understanding and context behind all this will be presented throughout you by the subject matter expert at the appropriate time in the presentation. So
I guess we owe you more input. I'm trying to figure
Yep.
out how to get it.
We can do the pictures. We can do the numbers. I mean, there's a lot of things that we can do. We're probably not going to go down, and this is just me saying, I can be overruled and all that type of stuff. But my understanding from a conversation about a year and a half ago was we're not going to go deep down into schedule variances and things of that nature. It's just, again, based off a conversation a year and a half ago that I haven't had any updates on. We weren't going to go down that road. And this is supposed to be a high level where folks can understand the different things. So we can do the pictures. Honestly, I kind of liked your idea where we had another another that kind of showing the phases and stuff, compared to having tank one or this style tank planned work or planned to accomplish or planned close out. I think that's what we used to have, 0 and 0. I like that better, but again, that's my personal take. We can do the numbers. I mean, that's fine as well.
David Boxcap, but I like James' idea, but the only problem with that is that you guys can cherry pick, and you're maybe just going to show us the good news story, and we're not really going to know whether there are 50% of them are not meeting their targets. That's the thing that concerns me, is that how do we get a comprehensive view of what's going on at the site, and are you guys actually getting the work done that you're supposed to get done?
So what I would say to that is we're fairly transparent, and This is not an oversight presentation. This is a year-end culmination.
So I'll give you a different perspective since I was a contractor for many years. DOE runs the contractor. The contractor has to make all those reports. DOE punishes them. You can look at the award fee. They will punish you if you don't make the milestones or if you have a big accident. Okay, so that's really the interface where all that gets discussed. In our role, we want to make sure that the overall for the year is EM is getting stuff out of the ground, getting it out of the waste tanks, moving forward, cleaning up the site and getting out of South Carolina, right? That was a lot of people's goal over a long period of time. So our role is a little bit different. So we really do need to give more input, I think, how to achieve that goal, because I know what happens to the contractors if they mess up.
Yeah,
They're tightly monitored.
yeah, I think we all understand that, but in Malcolm Phillips again, but in some fashion, okay, they're getting stuff out of the ground, but if there isn't on schedule, then it's, okay, this is going to stretch out to be 50 years and not 2 years or 5 years. Or, there's got to be some semblance of that construct, and that's what I think people are trying to get here, trying to ask here. Are you on schedule? Are you not on schedule?
Well, the big discussions that you're talking about, Malcolm, happen at the full cab meeting, and EPA is there, and DHEC is there, and DOE's got these agreements, the contractor's there, and they have a lot of open discussions with us. And they tell us they're going to have to slip a milestone, because these are big milestones, right? And we're able to learn all that stuff. But this is just kind of the year-end review, okay? We had a good year, and
Then if we're, Malcolm Phillips again, if we're talking things that you want year-end review, is there anything that you put into these about personnel issues? In other words, your corrective action program, how many significant corrective action reports are filed? Is it trending upward? Is it trending downward? Is it staying the same? What's the dose releases off-site? Is it trending upward, downward? How many personnel exposure? On the personnel side, there's nothing in here about safety.
Those are separate reports that we get all year.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I just saw it was the end of the year thing. I thought maybe this
is the performance for liquid and solid waste, right? So the other ones are, we have the environmental monitoring people, and they get up and present all the time, and the contractors do, and the DOE and DHEC's outdoor monitoring people report on what they see from the site. So we have a lot of different reports during the year we get that covers all that stuff.
Yeah, I guess I was confused by the title, Environmental Management Cleanup Program Performance Measures for Fiscal Year 2018. I was confused. I thought that covered what the title suggested it covered.
Just covers the physical plant part. Anyway, we're running out of time. So what I would recommend is if you guys have comments, if you'll funnel them to me, and I'll get them to James so he can get them to Zach.
Yep, let's do that.
Because this is turned into a way different conversation I thought. So we have a lot of strong feelings, which is good.
This presentation always does.
It always does. I know, that's why I thought we ought to revisit it a couple of times. So is that all right with everybody?
Can do.
Okay. And then I don't think we have any other business tonight. And James refused to take us home, so I think we got to go fight the silver bluff.
Sorry about that.
Or you can go have some food right over here and hang out for an hour or so. And then
all right. Thank you. And we're closed. Good meeting.
Thank you.
Yep. All right.
Thank you.